Imagine if you giving your son a brand new car and your daughter-in-law a designer purse for Christmas, only to have them turn around and say, "We have no gift for you, and there's a reason why." What would you do? What I did next left everyone at the table stunned. Stay with me, because you won't believe the twist at the end, I'll admit it. I go a little overboard at Christmas. Some people call it festive spirit, but my friends and family know it's more like a full-blown holiday obsession. I want everything to be just right, and I mean everything. The tree, flawless, of course. I spend hours fluffing every branch, making sure each ornament is perfectly placed, and don't even get me started on the lights. If one bulb is out of place, I'll spot it from across the room and fix it before anyone else even notices. The table? Martha Stewart herself would be jealous. I iron the tablecloth, polish the silverware, and fold the napkins into little Christmas trees. I even have a set of holiday plates that only come out once a year, and I guard them like they're family heirlooms. And the food? Well, let's just say, if you left my house hungry, it was your own fault. I cook enough to feed a small army: turkey, ham, mashed potatoes, stuffing, 3 kinds of pie, and at least 2 casseroles that nobody ever eats, but I make them anyway, just in case. This year, though, I was especially excited. My son Thayer and his wife Eloan were coming over for Christmas dinner. Now, Thayer is my only child, and I'll be honest, I still see him as my little boy, even though he's in his 30s now and towers over me. Eloan, my daughter-in-law, is lovely, smart, stylish, and always put together. She's the kind of woman who can wear white and not spill a thing on herself, which I find both impressive and slightly suspicious. I wanted this Christmas to be extra special for them, so I started planning months in advance. I made lists, checked them twice, and then checked them again, just to be sure. But the real excitement wasn't just about the food or the decorations. This year I had a surprise for each of them. For Thayer, I'd gone all out. A brand new car. Yes, you heard that right, a car. I know it sounds a little crazy, but he's been driving the same old sedan since college, and it's been making noises that even the mechanic can't identify. I figured it was time for an upgrade, and what better time than Christmas? I could already picture his face when he saw the big red bow on the driveway. For Eloan, I'd picked out a designer purse she'd been eyeing for months. She's always so gracious and never asks for anything, but I'd caught her admiring it in a store window once, and I made a mental note right then and there. I wanted her to feel special, to know that she was truly part of the family. I could already imagine the scene, the two of them opening their gifts, their faces lighting up with surprise and joy. I mean, who wouldn't want to be the favorite mother-in-law, right? I'll admit, there's a little part of me that loves the idea of being the one who gives the best gifts, the one they talk about for years to come. Remember the year Mom gave us a car? I could hear Thayer telling his friends. Or Eloan showing off her purse at brunch, saying, "My mother-in-law gave it to me for Christmas." It's not about the things, really. It's about the memories, the stories, the feeling of making someone you love truly happy. But let me ask you, have you ever had a feeling that something was just a little off? Like the calm before a storm? Well, I should have trusted my gut. In the days leading up to Christmas, there were little signs that I tried to ignore. Thayer called to say they'd be a little late, which isn't unusual, but there was something in his voice, hesitation maybe, or nerves. Eloan texted me to ask if there was anything she could bring, which was sweet, but she's never done that before. She's more of a show up and look fabulous kind of guest, not a let me bring a side dish type. I brushed it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. After all, Christmas is stressful for everyone, right? Maybe they were just busy or tired or caught up in the holiday rush. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing. I found myself double-checking everything. Did I buy enough wine? Was the turkey big enough? Did I remember to get Eloan's favorite dessert? I even called my sister to ask if she thought it was too much to give a car as a Christmas gift. She laughed and said, "Only if you're trying to win mother-in-law of the year." Maybe I was. Maybe I just wanted everything to be perfect, to make up for all the times I felt like I'd fallen short. The night before Christmas, I barely slept. I kept going over my lists, making sure I hadn't forgotten anything. I wrapped the purse in the prettiest paper I could find, with a big gold bow on top. I hid the car keys in a little box and tucked it under the tree, right next to Thayer's stocking. I even wrote a heartfelt card to each of them, telling them how much they meant to me. I wanted them to know that, no matter what, they were loved. Christmas morning arrived, and I was up before the sun, bustling around the kitchen, basting the turkey and humming along to Bing Crosby. I set the table, lit the candles, and stood back to admire my handiwork. It was perfect, at least as perfect as I could make it. All that was left was to wait for Thayer and Eloan to arrive. As I stood there, looking at the tree sparkling in the corner and the gifts piled high, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I wanted everything to go smoothly, for the day to be filled with laughter and love. But in the back of my mind, that little voice whispered, "Something's coming." I pushed it aside, telling myself not to borrow trouble. After all, Christmas is a time for joy, for family, for making memories. Whatever happened, I was ready. Or so I thought. Little did I know this Christmas would be one I'd never forget, not because of the gifts I gave, but because of the lesson I was about to learn. And as I waited for the doorbell to ring, I took a deep breath and whispered, "Let the holiday magic begin." Dinner was a hit, if I do say so myself. The house was filled with the kind of laughter that only comes when family is together, the kind that echoes off the walls and makes you forget about the little aches in your knees or the fact that you've been on your feet since sunrise. The stories flowed as easily as the wine, maybe a little too easily, but isn't that what holidays are for? Thayer recounted tales from his college days, and Aloan chimed in with her own stories about their first year of marriage, the mishaps and the little victories. I watched them, my heart swelling with pride and love, thinking, this is what it's all about. The food disappeared faster than I could refill the serving dishes, and even the green bean casserole, which usually gets pushed around the plate, was met with surprising enthusiasm. I caught myself grinning as I poured another round of wine, feeling that warm, fuzzy glow that only comes from seeing your family happy and well-fed. The candles flickered, casting a golden light over the table, and for a moment, everything felt perfect, like a scene from one of those holiday movies I secretly watch when no one's around. But as the plates were cleared and the last crumbs of pie were devoured, the anticipation in the room shifted. It was time for gifts, and I could feel my heart start to race. I'd been waiting for this moment for weeks, imagining the looks on their faces, the surprise, the joy. I reached under the tree and pulled out the little box with the car keys, my hands trembling just a bit. "Thayer," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I think you'll want to open this one first." He took the box, his brow furrowed in confusion, and when he lifted the lid and saw the keys, his jaw dropped. For a second he just stared, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. Then he looked at me, eyes wide, and I could see the little boy he used to be, the one who used to wake me up at 5 a.m. on Christmas morning, shining through the man he'd become. "Mom, is this?" He started, and I just nodded, unable to keep the tears from welling up. "Go look in the driveway," I said, and he bolted for the door, Aloan right behind him. I followed, laughing as they flung open the door and saw the shiny new car parked outside, a big red bow on the hood. Thayer whooped, actually whooped, and Aloan clapped her hands. Her face lit up with delight. It was everything I'd hoped for. Back inside, I handed Aloan her gift, the designer purse she'd admired months ago. She unwrapped it carefully, her fingers tracing the logo, and when she realized what it was, she let out a squeal that could have shattered glass. "Oh my gosh, you didn't!" she cried, hugging me tight. I felt like Oprah. "You get a car! You get a purse!" I half expected confetti to fall from the ceiling. For a moment, I basked in the glow of their happiness, feeling like I'd nailed it, like I'd managed to create the perfect Christmas memory. I glanced at the tree, the twinkling lights reflecting in the windows, and thought, this is what I live for. But then, it was their turn. I settled back in my chair, heart pounding, expecting, well, something. Maybe a framed photo of the three of us, or a little trinket from their last vacation, or even just a heartfelt card. I didn't need anything big, just a token, a sign that they'd thought of me. Thayer cleared his throat, glancing at Aloan, who was still clutching her new purse. There was a pause, just long enough for me to notice the way Aloan's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Thayer looked at me, then at his wife, and back at me again. "Mom," he started, his voice oddly formal, "my wife told me to teach you a lesson, so no gifts this year." He said it almost apologetically, as if he was reading from a script he didn't quite believe in. I blinked, not sure I'd heard him right. No gifts, not even a card? I looked at Aloan, expecting her to jump in, to say it was a joke, but she just stood there, smiling like she'd just won the lottery. The room, so full of warmth and laughter just moments before, suddenly felt cold. I tried to keep my face neutral, but I could feel the disappointment settling in my chest like a stone. I mean, what would you do? Laugh? Cry? Throw the turkey at them? For a split second, I actually considered it, just picking up the half-eaten bird and launching it across the table. But instead, I just sat there, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. I glanced at Thayer, searching his face for some sign that this was all a misunderstanding, a poorly timed joke. But he just looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat, avoiding my eyes. Aloan, on the other hand, seemed perfectly at ease, her smile never wavering. I wondered what lesson she thought I needed to learn. Was it about giving too much? About boundaries? About not trying to buy their love? My mind raced, replaying every conversation we'd had over the past year, searching for clues. Had I overstepped? Had I made them feel uncomfortable with my gifts, my efforts to make everything perfect? Or was this just some new tradition, some modern idea of teaching gratitude that I hadn't gotten the memo about? The silence stretched, awkward and heavy. I tried to muster a smile, to say something lighthearted, but the words caught in my throat. I felt foolish, like I'd missed some unspoken rule. I thought about all the time and effort I'd put into making this day special, all the little details I'd obsessed over. And for a moment I felt invisible. I know it sounds dramatic, but when you pour your heart into something, and it's met with indifference, or worse, a lesson, it stings. I looked at the gifts I'd given, the car keys glinting on the table, the purse still in Alohan's lap, and wondered if I'd done too much. Maybe I was trying too hard. Maybe I needed to step back, let them find their own way. But then again, isn't that what mothers do? We give, and sometimes we forget to ask for anything in return. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I wasn't going to let this ruin Christmas. Not after all the work, all the love I'd poured into this day. I forced a laugh, hoping it didn't sound as hollow as I felt. Well, I said, I guess that's one way to keep things simple. Thayer managed a weak smile, and Alohan just kept on grinning. I looked at them, my heart aching, and wondered what the next chapter of our family story would look like. Would this be the Christmas we remembered for all the wrong reasons, or would it be the one that taught us all something about love, about giving, about what really matters? Only time would tell. For now I just sat there, holding on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, the best gifts were still to come. Now I could have let it go. I could have smiled and said, "That's okay, honey," and tried to brush off the sting of their lesson. With a laugh and a wave of my hand, I could have pretended it didn't matter, that I wasn't hurt, that I hadn't spent weeks planning and shopping and wrapping and cooking, all to make this Christmas special for the two people I loved most in the world. But where's the fun in that? Where's the lesson for them? I've always believed that life is too short to let things slide when your heart is on the line. So, instead of swallowing my disappointment, I decided to serve up a little lesson of my own, one with a dash of humor, a sprinkle of suspense, and just enough drama to keep things interesting. I reached into my bag, the one I always keep tucked by my chair during the holidays. You never know when you'll need a tissue, a pen, or apparently, a teachable moment, and pulled out an envelope. It was plain white, nothing fancy, but I'd tucked it away just in case the day called for a little extra something, and boy, did it ever. Perfect, I said, my voice a little too cheerful. Then I have one more gift for you both. I watched as their faces shifted from smug satisfaction to sudden uncertainty. You should have seen them. Thayer's eyebrows shot up, and Alohan's smile faltered just a touch, her eyes darting from me to the envelope and back again. For a split second, I wondered if I was being too dramatic, but then I thought, no, this is exactly what the moment calls for. After all, if they wanted to teach me a lesson, it was only fair that I return the favor. I held the envelope out, letting it dangle between my fingers just long enough to build a little suspense. Was it tickets to a cruise, a check, a letter disowning them? Okay, maybe not that last one, or maybe, I'll admit, the thought crossed my mind, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from grinning. The room, which had felt so heavy just moments before, was suddenly charged with a new kind of energy. Part curiosity, part fear, and, if I'm honest, a little bit of excitement. Thayer reached for the envelope first, his hands just a little shaky. Alohan leaned in, her perfectly manicured nails tapping nervously on the table. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, trying to guess what was inside. I almost felt bad for them, almost, but then I remembered the look on Alohan's face when she delivered her lesson, and I steeled myself. This was my moment. Thayer slid his finger under the flap and pulled out the note. He unfolded it slowly, his eyes scanning the words. Alohan peered over his shoulder, her lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment nobody said a word. The silence stretched, thick and tense, as they read the message I'd written in my neatest handwriting. The greatest gift is gratitude. Remember, it's not about what you get but what you give. Merry Christmas? They looked at me stunned. Thayer's mouth opened and closed, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't quite find the words. Alohan's smile faded just a bit, her confidence slipping away as she realized the message was meant for her as much as for him. I sat back in my chair, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. I hadn't wanted to hurt them, but I also couldn't let their lesson go unanswered. I wanted them to understand that Christmas isn't about the price tag or the number of gifts under the tree. It's about the love we share, the memories we make, and the gratitude we show for the people who go out of their way to make us feel special. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the soft crackle of the fireplace. I could see Thayer's mind working, replaying the events of the day, the gifts, the laughter, the awkward silence. I wondered if he remembered the Christmases when he was little, when he'd make me macaroni necklaces and hand-drawn cards, and I'd treasure them more than anything money could buy. I wondered if Alohan thought about her own family traditions, about the ways we show love that don't come wrapped in shiny paper. I hoped, in that moment, that they understood what I was trying to say, that gratitude is the greatest gift of all, and that sometimes, the most meaningful lessons come wrapped in the simplest packages. Then, just as the tension threatened to swallow us whole, Thayer started to laugh. It wasn't a big, booming laugh, but a soft, genuine chuckle that grew louder as the realization sank in. He looked at me, his eyes shining with something like understanding, and shook his head. "You got us, Mom," he said, his voice warm and a little sheepish. "You really got us." Aloan, on the other hand, didn't look quite as amused. Her smile, so bright and confident earlier, had faded to something more uncertain. She glanced at Thayer, then at me, and for the first time all evening she seemed at a loss for words. I felt a little bit like Santa and the Grinch all rolled into one, delivering a gift and a lesson, wrapped up in a single envelope. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and smiled, the tension in my shoulders easing just a bit. "I just wanted you both to remember what matters," I said, my voice softer now. "It's easy to get caught up in the gifts and the parties and the pressure to make everything perfect. But at the end of the day, it's about being together, appreciating each other, and saying thank you for the little things." I looked at Thayer, remembering the years when a hug and a homemade card were all I needed to feel loved. I looked at Aloan, hoping she understood that being part of a family means giving as much as you get, and sometimes that means showing a little gratitude, even if it's just with a simple thank you. The room felt different now, quieter, more thoughtful. Thayer reached across the table and squeezed my hand, his eyes full of apology and affection. Aloan nodded, her expression softening as she realized the lesson wasn't meant to hurt but to heal. For the first time all day I felt truly seen, truly understood. Maybe I hadn't gotten the gift I expected, but I'd given one that mattered. And as we sat there, the three of us, surrounded by the remnants of a holiday feast and the glow of twinkling lights, I realized that sometimes the best gifts aren't the ones you can unwrap. They're the ones that change your heart. And in that moment, I knew this Christmas would be one we'd never forget. Not because of the car or the purse or even the envelope, but because we'd learned together that the greatest gift is gratitude. After the shock of my little envelope wore off, something shifted in the room. The tension that had been hanging over us like a stubborn winter fog began to lift, replaced by a quiet, almost tentative warmth. For a few moments we just sat there, the three of us surrounded by the remnants of Christmas dinner and the soft glow of the tree lights, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I could see Thayer glancing at Aloan, searching her face for some sign of how to proceed, while Aloan stared down at her lap, her fingers tracing the edge of her new purse. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day settle on my shoulders, and decided that if ever there was a time for honesty, this was it. So I broke the silence. "You know," I said, my voice gentle but steady, "I didn't do all this because I expected anything in return. I did it because I love you both." But I have to admit, it hurt a little to feel like that didn't matter. My words hung in the air, and for a moment, I wondered if I'd said too much. But then Thayer reached across the table and took my hand, his grip warm and reassuring.
"Mom, I'm sorry,"
he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I think we got so caught up in trying to make a point that we forgot what really matters. You've always gone above and beyond for us, and I guess we just took it for granted." He looked at Aloan, who nodded slowly, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm sorry too," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was helping Thayer set boundaries, but I see now that I was just being ungrateful. You've welcomed me into your family with open arms, and I should have shown you more appreciation." That was all it took. The dam broke, and suddenly we were talking, really talking, for the first time in what felt like ages. We talked about expectations, about how easy it is to fall into the trap of thinking that love is measured by gifts or grand gestures, when really it's the little things that matter most. We talked about gratitude, about how sometimes we forget to say thank you to the people who love us most, simply because we assume they already know how we feel. I shared stories from my own childhood, about the Christmases when all I got was a pair of hand-knitted mittens and a hug from my mother, and how those simple gifts meant more to me than anything money could buy. Thayer told me about the pressures he felt to provide, to live up to the example I'd set, and how sometimes that made him feel like he was falling short. Aloan admitted that she'd always felt a little intimidated by my holiday perfection, and that her idea of teaching me a lesson was really just her way of trying to find her place in our family. We laughed, we cried, and somewhere in the middle of it all, we found our way back to each other. It wasn't easy and it wasn't always comfortable. There were moments when the conversation got a little heated, when old wounds were reopened and new ones threatened to form. But we stuck with it, because we knew that the only way to move forward was to face our feelings head on. And you know what? That conversation was the real gift. It was messy and honest and real, and it reminded me that the best moments in life are often the ones that don't go according to plan. As the night wore on and the fire burned low, I realized that I didn't need a fancy present or a grand gesture to feel loved. All I needed was this, my family together, talking and listening and learning from each other. By the time we said our goodnights, the air between us felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. Thayer hugged me tight, whispering, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Aloan squeezed my hand, her eyes full of gratitude and something else, respect, maybe, or understanding. I watched them walk out to the driveway arm in arm and felt a sense of peace settle over me. I knew that things wouldn't always be perfect, that there would be more bumps in the road ahead. But I also knew that we'd learn something important that night, something that would carry us through whatever challenges came our way. As I tidied up the kitchen, humming a little tune under my breath, I found myself thinking about all the women out there who pour their hearts into their families, who give and sometimes wonder if anyone notices. If you're reading this, I want you to know, you're not alone. We all have moments when we feel unappreciated, when we wonder if our efforts are worth it. But trust me, they are. Sometimes it just takes a little shake up, a lesson, a conversation, a simple envelope, to remind everyone what really matters. So, let me ask you, have you ever had to teach your family a lesson in gratitude? Or maybe you've learned one yourself, the hard way or the easy way. I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below, because I truly believe that when we share our experiences, we help each other grow. And if you enjoyed this little Christmas tale, don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories, more laughs, and maybe a few more life lessons along the way. Because around here we believe every day is a gift. Sometimes you just have to unwrap it. So, here's to the lessons we learn, the love we share, and the memories we make, messy, imperfect, and absolutely beautiful. Merry Christmas from my family to yours.